everybody, welcome to Simon on the Sofa, and I am delighted and very thankful to be here with my friend Stewart Pearce, who some of you are very familiar with, because you actually have sent in comments and wonderful messages around our first talk. Stewart Pearce was actually one of the first people to sit on Simon on the Sofa when it was originated and birthed. And so I'm really, like I said, just delighted to have another amazing, transparent, transformational conversation with this wonderful man. And as you know, for you who don't know Stewart, then this will be the second conversation and you can find his other one. So welcome, Stewart. Great to see you.
Welcome. Welcome to this sanctuary.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, thank you so much. So we've had a beautiful tea and a beginning to a wonderful conversation in your home, and I think I'd like to start with we've moved through 2012, you know, the transforming year.
Haven't we just?
Yeah, and I remember our last conversation was very much about sovereignty and self, and there was a lot of transformation going on at the time in society, in politics and everything. And obviously it was like, you know, the sort of warm up to 2012. And then we've gone through 2012 and we're now into this beautiful new age and in the 2013. So whenever I get somebody like yourself, and I know from our powerful conversations that we have, it's like, you know, what's on your mind at the moment, in this present moment, and if you could share something with the world, as we do through this now beautiful multimedia.
The multimedia.
The multimedia, you know, what arises for you from that space? Like,
well, the interesting thing for me is that heaven is really here. Now, we know that we were given a prophecy many thousands of years ago by a great master called Yeshua, or Jesus, who said, "And ye shall inherit the kingdom of heaven." And we always thought it was there, wherever there was. But actually, what's interesting as a result of these great energetic shifts that we've been through, that my experience is that more and more and more people are becoming aware of themselves in terms of their physical body and their emotional intelligence. So they're beginning to love their bodies. And secondarily, they're becoming more aware of each other. And so, you know, we can see all sorts of different conducts taking place as a result of different behavior. And thirdly, therefore, individuals are more sensitive and more open to the preternatural, or to that substance that we believe in, which is the magic of life. I had a very remarkable experience at the end of last year by taking 25 people to Egypt for December the 21st. We were actually in the temple of Luxor, which is the throat chakra of the world, for December the 21st, which was very remarkable. I've been to Egypt many times. I've been on pilgrimage, I think, over the last 35 years, because as we all know, I'm slightly older than I look.
Only a little bit.
Just a little bit of makeup. And the temples, these are star temples, meaning that they sit on astrogeographical sites. Now, these temples I know extraordinarily well, but I have never seen them as I saw them on these occasions, from December the 14th through to the New Year. And what I mean by that is that they're ascension chambers that have been switched on by the very remarkable shifts of energy, both within our planet, the mystery of our planet as a living organism, and within the cosmos. So we know, for example, that December the 21st was a time portal that we put on the consciousness of the precession of the equinoxes, that it takes almost 26,000 years for the whole of the planets to orbit around the star of the sun and then come into a direct line. So the way that the angels, my guardians, give me understanding is that at that point all of the planets lined up in this straight line, so that we, in other words, receive the greatest impulse of love that we'd received from the galactic heart for over 26,000 years. So that is really remarkable. As a result of that, you see that if we're open to that, the monoliths that we build, like the great star temples of Egypt, and all the other star temples that are around, particularly in South America, but I speak of my own experience of Egypt, that they were literally switched on. So I walked into temples that I know extremely well. They're all in ruins, and yet actually, holographically, they look as though they're whole. And the reason being that the three-dimensional life of weight, space and time has been fortified, has been amplified, has been enriched by these extraordinary cosmic energies, so that there's a fifth dimensional temple sitting on top of the three-dimensional temple. We took photographs. The photographs are full of orbs. The photographs are full of unusual phenomena. Extraordinary lights, holographic representations in ordinary photographs to indicate what some of us were actually seeing. Now, to tie that up with what we were talking about initially, I believe you see that if those great temples are switched on, it means that other energy vortices, other energy temples, both within our bodies and within the planet, the body of the planet, are also switched on. So it seems that we've turned a corner, and that more people are aware of their soul, more people are aware of spirit, and therefore more people are aware of their wholeness. At the same time, we know that the world has a reflection within it where there are lots of people that aren't aware. And what's extraordinary is that those that are able then to be in meditation for brothers and sisters that aren't, be in prayerfulness, be in chanted forms for those that aren't, not as a result of criticism, not as a result of judgment, just purely as a result of, please come and join the delight, the thrill, the fun, the wonderment that we are having, because you guys don't look very happy.
Yeah. Wonderful. I told you there'd be a lot to be digesting, so amazing. So okay, so we've gone through this this 26,000 year cycle, and then there's also a number of mini cycles within the cycles, isn't there? Like a 2,000 year cycle of one, and we move into the Aquarius age. Seven cycles all emerging at one point.
And it was sort of held. We were on the crescent of 104,000 year cycle, intergalactic cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
And we've chosen to be here to explore it.
So when you take that on board, which a lot of people are just so not aware of whatsoever, of even because your average Joe doesn't go down to the store and start thinking about cycles of the planet and tuning into the cosmos and moving our awareness out of the limited self, indoctrinated, unhappy, as you said at the end, self. Trying to just function, as it were, to even understand what it is that is occurring, and then just finding yourself in almost in a rut of more often than not experiences that are not serving each other, not serving the self, and not serving each other. So when you start to open, like you just did, it was a beautiful introduction. You've just opened, almost a vortex of awareness right there, right? Because all of a sudden it's gone. You was in Egypt, and like you said, you've been out there many times. So we're in this, in this opening, and it's in that space where also you sort of said before the talk as well, where those other frequencies, they don't actually exist. So the other frequencies I'm talking about is like, the indoctrination, the invisible prison, society as a whole, because most people are holding on to their identity at the moment. When you come, I know there was like a weight that seemed to drop for a lot of people, because a lot of people genuinely thought that the world was going to implode in 2012 and so on. So we've moved into another cycle, and then we're talking about, an Aquarius age, a time of, transformation, and more of a golden age as well, right? Some have termed it as, haven't they? Sort of like we're moving into that state, like you said. But also the key thing is that not everybody has to move into that state, do we? But it's about how we can birth new structures and new community, because that's the key thing as well. It's like coming together in community and unity to actually start to really, because you started it beautifully again with heaven on earth, right? Is start to actually, how does that show up? How do we create that? How does that start to actually be more prevalent, really? You see that. So I know, it can be, people can do trips to Egypt, people can, read your books, read your cards, go on a journey like we have, meditate and create it. We create that. We make that choice. That's our life. That's been your life for, you know, many years. Okay, so the invitation is for people to make it their life, right? So as we're, and you said more people are waking up, as it were. Yeah. You know, because there's that whole thing about awakening, isn't it? Yeah. So it's it's like more people are waking up. So for me, I'm the optimist, aren't I? So we are waking up to what we already are, right?
Yes.
Or what is already there for us, because, you know, we're connected to the magnitude beyond label, aren't we? You know, and you've gone on, please. What comes? I know I'm sort of trying to bring it, you know, bring that into, you know, the here and now as well for people.
Well, for me, what's interesting, as there's been this great acceleration of consciousness, and that more and more and more people are getting it. We know this because all you have to do is walk into Barnes & Noble or Waterstones and you can hardly get in the door for self-empowerment books. We know this because you can go into Starbucks, or in this city, in London, you can go into Pret a Manger, and there are more people who are drinking herbal teas than were drinking coffee, and there are more people who are eating vegetarian foods than there used to be. I mean, the statistics prove this. So there is a great shift, and you know, we're reminded by social science that it only takes 11% of the population to change collective consciousness. So very soon, I'm sure that there will be a global event that will awaken all of our hearts to a very refined degree of loving, which is an amplification of that we already feel, meaning that it's a refinement, that it's an upgrading, that we move on to a higher octave. I pray that it won't be through desperation and disaster. I pray that it will be through inspiration, rather like the event that took place, what is it now, this year in April, it will be 3 years ago, when two young people, who happened to be William and Kate, married, and it was suggested that 4.5 billion people watched that ceremony. In other words, 4.5 billion people plugged into joy, plugged into love, because they were the radiating forces of that particular occasion, and their hearts were moved. That's 4.5 billion people. That's over half the population of the planet. There are 7 billion people living on this planet. So that's really quite staggering. I believe that there is more going on in attitude towards a subtle change within the consciousness of our brothers and sisters than we see, because we're living quite a dense form. I see this very particularly because the law of two is even more palpably rich today between the great divides of those that have abundance and those that believe in scarcity. I believe fundamentally that scarcity does not exist, but it's a choice that we're given, and so we create it. I believe that we are from the source, and the source is an infinitely unfolding creative possibility full of love and joy. It is full of abundance. So if we want to create lives of abundance, we will create them, because it's to do with feeling I am abundant, and abundant with love and with gratitude and with joy and with delight and with passion and with thrills, as opposed to, well, I don't have anything. The point is that we do have a lot. So it seems as though there are certain chaotic measures out there that are very contrasting. But what I'm actually putting forward is the thesis that the contrast between the anger and the love, or between the abundance and the scarcity, are more acute today, and therefore it shows us that something huge is shifting, and therefore very soon we're going to see 11% of the population changing mass consciousness. It began 2 years ago with ours. It began with ours, with Occupy Wall Street. Because ours was stimulated by 425 young Egyptian people on Facebook who stimulated a revolution in Egypt. And you know, going to Egypt a lot as I do, I see the changes that are taking place in Egypt, where they've unplugged from a plutocracy, which was all about a dictator, essentially. And what they've done is to plug into democracy, and they're desperately trying to find, or maybe to remove the word desperate, they're calmly trying to find ways of resolving the infrastructure. Because Egypt is a very big country, and there are very divergent mini-cultures or subcultures within the big culture of what it is to be an Egyptian. So, but just over 400 young people began the revolution on Facebook. So it just proves to us the power of a social network like Facebook. And they're beginning to live that change.
Yeah, and so from that place, you said the law of two. Did you just explain? So the law of two. What do you mean by the law of two? I haven't heard that term. The law of two.
We're in the sense that we're living a binary system on this planet, but nothing is singular, everything is plural. So where there is Simon, there is Stewart.
Yeah.
Where there is the sun, there is the moon. Where there is love, there is hate. Where there is guilt, there is innocence. Where there is depression, there is expression.
Yeah.
So every single energy has a contrasting state.
Yeah.
The question I believe that we've asked ourselves is, what state, what behavior is serving me? And if we see therefore a radical sense of the reality of, well, actually I am depressed and I don't have any money and my body's not very well and I don't have any significant relationships that are nurturing me and succouring me, or that suddenly society finds that I'm a socially unacceptable individual and I'm locked away in a psychiatric institution or in a prison or whatever, that we go through these processes which I believe are largely karmic, and we recognize, wait a minute, all I'm feeling is depressed, all I'm feeling is scarce, all I'm feeling is unwell, all I'm feeling is, and we change them into the opposite.
Yeah.
It's the alchemy of divine alchemy of what the potential of our lives can be, so that those who are depressed suddenly become expressive. Those who feel themselves to be wallowing in poverty suddenly become full of prosperity. So there is always that possibility, and that's what I mean by the law of two.
Yeah. So duality as well, playing with duality. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then also coming back. So just to touch on, what you again, as always, described lovely. So then to touch on this idea, how many people went out to the? Because we know mini shifts occur, but you said the royal wedding. So there was how many billion?
4.5 billion people.
4.5 billion people watched that. So that's phenomenal. When I hear that. But you and I both know that also the monarchy, the government, politics, whatever you want to look at it, also plays a huge role in some form of suppression to some extent. The royals in the castle, and we're the mere peasants outside, and everyone's trying to survive while they're controlling stuff. So it's interesting that, yes, they came out for love and joy.
I don't see that.
No, I know, but I'm saying people do. So that's
see
like
that they're in a house.
Yeah.
That's their house and this is my house.
Yeah, totally.
It's just theirs is slightly bigger.
Yeah.
Because they have bigger parties.
They got more friends and bigger parties. No, totally.
They have bigger parties because they're actually serving us by giving big parties for all sorts of intriguing people like businessmen and foreign dignitaries that need to be looked after. So if I were working like that, then I wouldn't have a room this size. I'd have a much bigger room. Yeah. But I don't. I don't have big parties.
Yeah. No, totally. But you. I mean, you are probably aware that the monarchy in general and the governments in general, and it's not. I'm not going into conspiracy. I just know that from where I am in the field, if you want to call it the field, right? As Rumi said, in the field. But I know that a lot of that suppression, indoctrination and so on, however which way you look at it, is a subconscious program that it's not like I don't think there's people out there in society that are just always running around going, how can we control these humans? But to some extent we're doing it ourselves now, based on the way that we are showing up from a place of scarcity, separation, anger, aggression, conflict and so on. So we're almost self-advocating this indoctrination to some extent. So for me it's very interesting that when I do hear something does come up in me, when I hear 4.5 billion come out to celebrate a royal wedding to some extent, which is love and it's a wedding and it's joy, but that 4.5 billion people, I personally wouldn't put them necessarily into a conscious all in a sovereignty conscious perspective of wanting to serve heaven on earth, for example. Does that make sense?
Well, the point is that they were serving heaven on earth in the sense that we all felt joy, we all felt love, and we all felt removed or transformed. We felt removed in the sense of that if we felt very unhappy that morning, we were moved into happiness by the conduct of those two young people.
Yeah.
You see, that's the significant thing. Now, what's interesting is that floating above our heads, 23,000 miles above our heads, is a satellite. It's a NASA satellite, and it's formulated to read the electromagnetic charge of Homo sapiens. Okay? So in other words, all of the collective charges that we give off are registered on this. Now, I'm sure that its receptor value is able, through silicon chip, to pick up exactly what you're feeling right now. I'm sure it's that sophisticated. But actually, it's programmed to pick up what happens in mass consciousness. And on that day, we are told, with 4.5 billion, only tuning in for 60 minutes, that literally the grading on this extraordinary satellite moved in the most extraordinary degree. Now, we have other information about, for example, when Princess Diana passed, that a similar thing took place, you see.
Yeah.
And then earlier on,
I'm sure with 9/11.
well, actually post that 9/11, because Diana died in 97, and then 9/11 we had. And there was something very staggering, which I talk about in one of my books, The Heart's Note, that when the first plane hit, there was an extraordinary response through the electromagnetic field of Homo sapien. And 10 to 15 minutes, I can't remember the exact time, but I have it written in my book, 10 to 15 minutes before the second plane hit, there was a similar surge. So in other words, our intuitive, our pre-perceptive, our preternatural experience of the way that we sense consciousness was awakened in that moment, just as there we are wondering why all the animals have left, and then we're hit by a tsunami. The animals know, do you see? They know. They know way before we know, because we're very dense in our bodies because of insensitivities and the fact that we've actually made our bodies quite toxic through what we've drank and what we think about and what we feel about and what we've eaten. But the animals, they know, do you see? So there's something very extraordinary going on within the context of, okay, so there is a shift taking place. However, we're still caught within the duality of there's little me over here and there's mass consciousness over here. And actually, what I believe is more appropriate is that we start seeing that we have within us 100 trillion cells, and that this is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And therefore, we have within us every being that exists on this planet. And therefore, if we make the change, we affect that, very simply. So it's not about worrying about that. It's about actually, well, what am I going to choose? And if I can live my life in each pulse, in each breath, in each moment of now, the nowness of now, and not indulge in what's happening next, with joy, with love, with I feel good. Being with you makes me feel good. Then our charge is great. So I would choose, I'd rather choose to be with you because you make me feel good than I would with, no names mentioned, somebody else who doesn't make me feel good. I just choose not to. So
simple choices.
It's very simple choices about, am I open to the possibility of how an exchange can enhance, can ameliorate, can amplify the whole substance of what I believe in, which is that love is all there is. Now, at the same time, it's something that came into our consciousness when we first started speaking about heaven on earth, and what we were referring to, that there are so many demonstrations or illustrations of unusual phenomena. Really, so many. So, for example, there are many photographs of orbs. I take huge amounts of orb photography, or rather people take photographs of me and there are always orbs in them, or extraordinary shafts of light. In Egypt we took tons and tons and tons of photographs, both still and moving, moving pictures as well as still pictures, of extraordinary phenomena. We saw UFOs, blah, 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 blah. This is something, in my experience, having been consciously living for over 30 years, that we were promised by the great ones, we were promised by the angels, that they would literally show themselves. Now, God moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. At the end of last year, there were suddenly many books on the market about NDE experience. There was Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to Be Me, which is absolutely exquisite. And then also Ibn Alexander, Proof of Heaven. And this is a very radical man that gives illustration of duality, that there he was, one of America's leading brain anatomists, one of America's leading brain scientists, who was a complete skeptic about any of the virtues that we're describing, was just in denial, and yet went through a unique experience where he caught the E. coli virus, which developed into meningitis, and he was dying. But then he came back, and he wrote a book about what he saw, which is one of the most beautiful books that I've ever written. And you can see that... that I've ever read. Because actually,
did you write it as well?
Freudian step. Because actually, what I was playing through my consciousness as I was moving on to another thought, and it's a reminder to be now in the present. Is that I was so moved by it that I sent an email to Ibn saying, I want to record this for you. I want to make an audio book for this. So that's what was playing through my consciousness.
I'll be the voice of.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't obviously replicate Ibn. No. Ibn has them. Interesting American accent.
You could though. You
wears
could.
Really nice bow ties. I don't wear bow ties, but anyway, he has nice bow ties. Very slightly Ivy League look gentleman, charming. That I was so moved, and in fact, I was also in the email asking him if I could have permission to use the work, because in the workshops that I teach internationally, I read a little section out, and it's the section where we discover that love is all there is, and it is one of the most iridescent moments. The way that Ibn is able to weave Proof of Heaven through the English language, and when I speak it, you hear sobs. You hear people weep in the audience. People get the charge.
Yeah, it's a direct connection to the source.
Direct.
You forget the mind and all the noise and trying to work it out. It's just like boom. It's hit something. Yeah.
And that's where it's at, isn't it? And that's really the sum total of what I was hoping to weave an answer to your question.
Yeah, you have.
Which is that it's all about that hit.
Yeah.
It's all about that charge.
Yeah.
Which is why one of the things that I said earlier about, I pray that we reach those levels of charge, not through desperation, but through inspiration.
And not through conflict, but for unity as well.
Yeah.
Because again, by any point that we go into a place of like, that isn't how it is, or we're judging and we're coming from a place of how it should be, how it shouldn't, that's not love, for example. The minute we even access that point, we're already straight into the out of that charge. We're already into that place we're into that place of what I term in a lot of my talks and on the sofa is I just call it unconsciousness, just for the reference point. It's like if when I was burgling houses and stealing and doing that, I term myself as being very unconscious at that point. Doesn't mean I was everything's brought me to where I am, but now being in a more conscious state, like you beautifully simply described, I choose to be with people that I love, that elevate me, that inspire me, that are in that direct experience. And a lot of the times, I know we're doing a conversation today, which is always lovely, and we're using words and experience to bring it to the world for the very reason.
To the world!
To the world, you're the world. Bring it to the world. Is so that at some point it all comes to silence, doesn't it? Because I mean, when I hear you chant and you delightful is my word. When I'm with Stewart, everything feels delightful. I mean, I'm in his house, and it's like we've done some chanting prior, and we've had a wonderful conversation. And whenever we hang out, hanging out with Stewart is really delightful, because we are in that place of what we're talking about, just that place of presence and listening and just fully being with each other in that space. And what is wonderful is, it's like when you chant and you played a wonderful, what was the song, the little song that you chanted to?
The Gayatri.
Yeah. And when you hear chant, it takes you beyond the words. We're using words today, and you use them eloquently as always. But it's the words are pointing beyond, aren't they? We're going to that.
If we move away from the intellect of what the word, the word triggers intellect. If we move into the core of the essence of the word, it's purely about going right back into the sound of the soul and the soul of the sound. You see, because in the beginning was the Word. No, in the beginning was sound, and the sound was made flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. That's what it really says at the beginning of the fourth gospel. But we get caught up in the intellect of words. But actually, it's the vibration. I could be sitting here and saying, but I don't think you really understand me. You probably think that I was actually a raving fruitcake. But I might go. It's just a bit of, just a little bit of Syrian, you see, because I'm originally from the planet Sirius, and here I am in human form. So I do believe, that there is a way of being able to feel the charge in words, and of course that's what the mantra is doing. It's in Sanskrit, so it's a language that you and I don't speak every day when we say, would you like a cup of tea? I don't actually know what Sanskrit for would you like a cup of tea is, but however, do you see? But in other words, it's just another vibrational code, and it's one that emits a huge charge, because the interesting thing is that when we chant, we can't think, we just experience. That's the interesting thing, you see. That when, it alters the neural pathways, so our consciousness expands and vibrates on a very different frequency, which is why we all feel different when we've chanted or when we've gone through a sonic meditation. Because I can go into prisons and do, very, very basic sonic meditation with a group of guys that I did, a few months ago, and they got up, and there was this guy who was this huge Rastafarian guy who was in there for GBH and for embezzlement and for using firearms and drugs and God knows what, and he had tears pouring down his cheeks and said, I feel absolutely effing amazing. I feel, Stu, I feel godlike. His whole life was changed. He said, I haven't felt like this for a long time. Now, it was purely and simply because we were breathing deeply, and purely and simply because he was sounding, and when we sound, we alter neural pathways. A huge biochemical process takes place. So we release serotonin, we release oxytocin. That's why we see angels with their mouths open, you see. They don't stand there with their mouths closed, and often they have trumpets coming out of them, like the Hallelujah chorus, Anyway, that's beautiful. I'm glad we're going into sound, because you're also termed as a sound healer, and you've used sound and voice, and I know even again, I know I mentioned it in even our first talk, but we always, you see how it always comes back to the source. It always comes back to the signature note with us. I love that terminology. Whenever we speak, you see how I love how even everything that we went there, from Egypt to society to the monarchy to, everything that's going on the outer, when you really just like play with that and bring it all back, it comes, which you did, you brought it back to self. It's like, where am I at? What am I contributing? And what am I bringing? How am I bringing my gift of life? This indescribable experience. How am I bringing this gift of life to the world through the choices I'm making? And then also, which again, as I always quote your first book that really got me to look at that the alchemy of voice, the signature note. And recently I created, as you know, I use video a lot, and a lot of people have asked me how to communicate authentically on camera. So I put a little course together just to show that, very affordable course, and to put it out there. And one of the things that I do in there is just talking just a little bit about using your term, the signature note, and just how when we get into that pure, our place of integrity, our sovereignty, our groundedness, that place of love, if you want to call it, and I know chanting is one access point of that, chanting sound, we get, again, it's like it connects us, doesn't it? It's like it sort of connects us to the soil, to the sky, it sort of just connects us completely differently. Do you want to just, I don't know what, throw something at, just throwing that out there. Yes, I mean, evidently sound is an energy, and we're only just beginning to really understand what that means, because we're beginning to interpret sound through vibration. and that everything vibrates, everything is frequency. But evidently, sound as a vibrational currency is something that pours out of a dimensional space within the cosmos that we haven't yet necessarily navigated or discovered. But Rumi referred to it as being the great singing field, the great sound field, which I believe is ultimately completely still and completely silent. But then when conversation starts, and when I say conversation, I mean an electron and a proton come together, and suddenly there's some sort of conversation, there's a vibration, then a sound is emitted. And therefore within us is a reminder of this, within our divine blueprint, within ourselves, there is a reminder of the fact that there is the seed, there is the note, do you see? There is something about sound which is iridescent and wonderful. So when people come together, and because we can see on our planet that for centuries people have come together to participate, to praise and to petition the divine. And when we do this, we always feel better. The difficulty is that many of our brothers and sisters don't do it. So because they listen to sound through their iPod or through radio or whatever, through their cell phone, MP3, but they're listening to it and it's just jamming their frequencies. And so what we're doing, a group of us, is to bring mantra into R&B, so we're creating music that's R&B and bringing mantra in. And I'm the big Oma, apparently, because I've spent a lot of time in recording studios sounding the Om, which is just recorded, placed as a track in relation to some very groovy, really cool music. So that starts feeding into Vox Pop, that starts moving into the great soundscape of our brothers and sisters, so that they actually open a conversation, because even if it's a conversation about what is this? What's that sound? The sound does the work. This is really interesting. The point is that their realities have changed. And I love what I love that as well is because earlier you mentioned about Omin and I use the singing bowl, as I said to you earlier, and then I sometimes just chant whatever I was feeling to come out. And you said about that there becomes that disconnect, doesn't there, of the mind, and we start to connect mind, brain, whatever you want to call it, intellect, and we sort of connect in. Because we can't think, you said, don't you? Because when you're Omin and you're listening to the singing bowl, for example, it just silences all that noise, all that chatter. What I've got to do, not do, where I've got to be, and so on. And I like that you just said about the music, because we use music, but coming together in sound, in chant, in unit, in community is completely different than, like you said, putting your iPhone, earphones in, because if I'm listening to a certain music, there's also within that there's an element of separation, isn't there? And it's not to say that nobody should listen to the music you love, but there's music that all encompasses, and there's music that creates sect still, isn't there? Do you see that? So it's really wonderful what you're saying. It's like, just bringing that, I know people will be out there going, oh, well, the Om means this, and you can't bring the Om into this music. And no, but everything for me at the moment is really about the possibility and the potential of us really coming together in unity, us really coming together in diversity, but through sustainability, through, really, what does that feel like? What does it really feel like? Because even in the fields that you and I are in, and we go out and share our message, you could still have somebody that might be talking our language, or this language to some extent, but you can meet them, and then there's no potential of unity or understanding, and there's still sometimes at some extent a resistance and a conflict that can build, even with people that are talking about love, for example. Whereas when we're talking about this bigger, beyond the four-letter word, love, I mean, in that space of full acceptance, of full allowing, full compassion, I mean, there is only what is. There's not even it doesn't feel to me to be even competitiveness. Like, I'm not, when I hear you speak and the way that you express it from your experience and journey, I'm just thrilled with that and can draw from that and take that. I'm not going, and I have been, when I first ever met you, there was that element of like,
oh, my voice isn't as strong as Stewart's, or, you know, I can't write as beautifully as Stewart, and so on. Whereas over the years of, you know, becoming more of a friend with you and getting to know you and reading your stuff, and it's like you can just draw from that. Does that make sense? You can just take from that, and that can elevate you. Like everybody, you know, we're all standing on. We can stand on the shoulders of who's been before and really allow that to flower something beyond our wildest dreams. Or we can go, no, I need to be the one that says it. You know, it's not. I need to be the one that channels the angels. You know, whatever it is. And it's like within, this is all just coming up as I'm speaking, but like even we talk about peace and unity out there in the world, and a lot of peace organisations are in conflict with each other.
Well, yes, I mean, you know, that's why I mentioned what we were talking about earlier about duality. Do you see that the very fact that duality is something that is so much within the mainstream conversation at the moment, because there are people who have and there are people that don't have. There are people who, you know, in a charity, there are people who feel very charitable, and there are those people who feel very stirred by the criticism of the fact that they're not actually as charitable as they could be, etc., etc. Yeah. The very point that that's actually there is an indication of the great laughter that's going on within the cosmos, isn't it? Because isn't it extraordinary that the great one, the infinite one, the great cosmic intelligence that created all of this would be able to create duality with no fear of the fact that we would get it wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's quite extraordinary.
Yeah. And there is no wrong, right?
And that there is literally there is no wrong. Yeah. But in the sense of that the light is seen to be more palatable or more attractive and more delightful than the dark, which is scary and is full of shadow and possibly has within it demons. You see. And of course we all experience the long dark night of the soul when we go through initiation, where we begin to recognize that in order to achieve a much higher vibration or a much higher frequency, we need to come to terms physically, emotionally, mentally and spiritually with the fact that we've been thinking and feeling in a certain way which has kept us in a prison, to do with our hatred or to do with our depression or to do with our bipolarism or to do with the fact that, well, you know, they've done it to me. And that's
anger, right?
Really all about being angry and being in denial of the fact that, you know, spirituality is a movement back to wholeness, I believe. That's all it is. And when we get whole, the first thing we want to do is share it with other people. And not through be like me, but purely and simply because actually it's real fun to feel this way. And so I'd love you to experience this, but if you don't want to, then don't worry, it's okay, I'll just continue doing it. I'll continue being it. That's the stage where I've got to in my life, because I know for many years I compromised myself through a social conviction that I had to be what other people wanted me to be, which was small and which was reductionist and which was I had to fit into their systems. And I tried doing that, and then it didn't really work, so I got depressed. And I'm not really a chronic depressive individual, but what I mean is that I withheld energy. And then I thought, well, this is ridiculous. Exactly, suppressed. This is ridiculous. And so I reformed that conversation and started sharing what I really felt, and they didn't really like it. So I thought, well, I better go elsewhere, because it's silly being here if they don't really like it. And so I did. And what's fascinating now is that a lot of people around the world love what I'm saying. So in other words, well, really what I'm intuiting and interpreting by this quality of conversation is that we move to a point where we feel a level of magnificence, and therefore we vibrate through the quality of what that magnificence is all about, and therefore we are always expressed, you see, because magnificence is all about awe and joy. The two gatekeepers. Yes, but it's a question of, well, what is the expression? You know? It could be, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw a really lavish party, and I'm going to use 5 credit cards, and it doesn't matter what debt we, you know, I think it's a bit dumb, quite frankly.
No, I'm glad
that could be perceived as being magnificent, you know. And I'm not suggesting that we, shouldn't have 5 credit cards, and we shouldn't enjoy having credit cards, and then, we discover we have a debt, and so we move it into a 0%, and pay it off.
Yeah, which I did. And then getting more and more debt and so on. But
it's a way of playing. Well, I don't believe that there is a debt, do you see? I really don't. I believe that there isn't a credit crunch, there's a debt squeeze. So what we're all doing is now looking at how responsible am I about the way that I use money, and that's a wonderful conversation to have.
That's a beautiful conversation to have. I know I mentioned to you Charles Eisenstein, who's out there at the moment, is just one person that's really sort of talking about a sacred economy and a new way of birthing, making money sacred again, bringing back the sacredness of what what money could support us to do. And it's like, at the moment, if anything, the way that we've disrespected money to some extent, disrespected the capacity of what money can do, hence why we spend billions of pounds on certain things that just continually kill and so on, for example. It's like it's actually bringing back the essence of money, of exchange, of gift, of expression. And I'm glad that you brought me back on that, actually, because full expression, because I say to people sometimes, what is the grandest version of yourself, the highest, grandest version of yourself? So, for example, when people come and they might want to help out on anything that I'm doing, or I bring people into just into my space, that want to help out with the things that we're doing, from Simon on the Sofa, the Global Love Letters, or whichever one we're doing. And I always say, is this exactly what you want to do and where you want to be, and is this the fullest expression of what you know yourself to be in this moment? And if that is making the teas, and you really want to be here and go and make us a wonderful pot of tea,
and make it magnificent,
then make it magnificently. And it's like, if you really want to help me out on the social media platform, then when you're on there, you're really engaging with the people on the social media platform, and because you know that as your life force, as your life energy, this is what you would like to do today, Like, I want to be here today speaking with you, We spoke already a week or so ago. We had a wonderful lunch, and it's like, and I brought the camera along, and I wanted to have a catch-up conversation with you over the past 2 years of where we're at and what we can bring forward. So, out of my full expression of what I know I'm capable of doing at the moment to support humanity, be a service to humanity, and to really help others step into this wonder of themselves, I wanted that conversation to be with you today, and we're bringing that through. Do you see what I mean? When I sat with Charles Eisenstein, I see some of his videos, and I loved what he was saying. I was like, wow, I'd love to, bring him to some of the people that I know, and, do you see what I mean? Because it's about really bringing through that. That for me is what full expression is. It's like, how can I bring more of life through what it is that I'm doing? Whereas for many years I was very much, again, suppressing that life, suppressing, not knowing what life force really is. I mean, because I'm also open to maybe something like what you experienced in when I say what you were talking about. How you opened the conversation today, the vastness from Egypt and the cosmos and so on. I mean, when I look out there, we are not separate from that. It's that, so even because a lot of people talk to me about, well, it's not about the separating the shadow, and you are angry in life, and life is hard, and life is a struggle, and you should, it is full of conflict, and I hear that, and I'm not about separating. I'm about integrating that anger, integrating that experience that you're having. Like you beautifully described earlier with a scenario that happened with somebody might be angry and they have to go on their own journey, but I think what I'm really infused about is the potential of what's emerging way beyond what my limited thinking is even capable of.
Yes. Well, you speak of many things, and I'm trying to see where's my response and what it's all about.
Of course.
And it's very interesting how duality keeps coming up about where there is the magnificence, but then there's also something else. Well, I just don't go there. Do you see? We know that exists, and it's not that I'm foolish or I'm rose tinted. It's just that why go there? Let's go on and stand on the shoulders of giants. Well, why? Because they see further. And isn't that really what we want to do? We want to see further, because when we see further, we realize how magnificent our planet is, how magnificent the animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdom is, and therefore, because I'm part of that, I am animal, vegetable, and mineral, that I'm just as magnificent as that. Well, let's just keep looking at that horizon, shall we, rather than look down there. Why look down there? It's not necessary. Which doesn't mean to say that I don't mitigate, that I don't negotiate in that area by working with people who are very severely ill, for example, who are dying, and who are often in a terrible state. Then I will go there, or I will serve charitably, is really what I'm talking about, rather than going into a whole list of scenarios that I get involved in from a work point of view. And then we go back into the real substance of what you were expressing vis-a-vis sacred commerce, which is, again, all about an exchange of energy, isn't it? And I'm very awakened by this, because evidently within our political economic states at the moment, there is something that we need to do, because the paradigms are no longer functioning. And so I'm reminded of great philosophies that, for example, arise out of early cultures, and because Egypt, here I go again, Egypt, because Egypt is so significant to me, one of the great things that I've discovered over the last 3 years of being in Egypt and having Egyptian friends is that originally there were merchant priests. There were priests who were merchants, and all of their commercial exchange was based on barter. So it was actually all about the fact that there is no scarcity. It's all about abundance, you see, because if you give me something, then you're going to give me something back. And there is the old social adage that says that if you're having dinner with a sheikh and you say, "Oh, I like that," and then he's got to give it to you because you like it.
Nice, I like that.
Amusing. So if you ever go and sit in the house of a well-to-do Arab, just make sure you say, I like, except don't say it in relation to his wife.
Yes.
He has to, but he is duty-bound to give it to you. However, the point is that there is this beautiful exchange, and the goddess that really overshadows in a very protective way the whole substance of the priest merchants, or the merchant priest, is the goddess of Hathor. And the goddess Hathor is the goddess of fertility and the goddess of beauty, rather like Venus or Aphrodite. So isn't that interesting? You see that even exchange on a commercial level can be beautiful.
Yeah.
And really, isn't that what Marianne was writing, which then Nelson Mandela used in that great oration, that great eulogy? Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's not playing small. Playing small does not serve the world.
Yeah.
Playing magnificently, expressing ourselves, making beautiful choices. This is really what men and women through past civilizations, through past eons of time, have always tried to find a way of doing. And it seems that, on this occasion, we also have an opportunity to make that choice.
Yeah.
And so you're doing it, and I'm doing it, and I'm sure that many of our brothers and sisters, through this wonderful televisual reality, are also going to shift.
And I think just to throw in there is actually with everything that we've spoken about today, which is wonderful, and for you guys out there watching, you could just take a little aspect of some of the things we've shared today and go on your own magical mystical journey, and explore that, and read Stewart's book, for example, go on the journey. Books and watch books and the cards, read the cards. Do you want to share, because this is a second, would you like to share about the second pack?
This is the second oracle that these beings of light that have been talking to me for now 26 years, that are a group of angels that come together as a communion, because when they come together, their force is amplified. So it's like a summit conference to help us. The way that they want to help us is through the recognition of the fact that we made a solemn pledge, and that pledge was wildfire through our societies, particularly in the West. And that pledge was, who am I and what am I to be? Now, Jung called that individuation. And so what we've done is that we pioneered our own sovereignty, we pioneered our own individuality to such an extent that now we're having conversations about the fact that I am an individual, but I'm also part of a collective.
Yeah.
And the point is that as a result of believing so fervently in our individuation, that we feel that we've got to do all of this alone.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And there's no aloneness.
And the point is
well,
that
no
now we're
loneliness.
recalibrating ourselves into understanding that, wait a minute, I'm not alone. If I put another L in the word alone, it's all one.
Yeah.
And so they come.
Wait. They say, yeah, if I put another...
If you see Alone.
Yeah.
And then you put another L in it, it's all one.
All one.
So then
I love when we do that with words, like now here, nowhere, now
exactly.
here. Go on, carry on, sorry.
So it's interesting that we would have that vibration alone, isn't it? Because after all, it is something that springs out of the way that patriarchy has functioned within our civilizations, or indeed within our cultures, within our nationhood. Because we know that when it comes down to the final unit of the way that patriarchy has represented itself, or it's illustrated itself, it boils down to the fact that we're all living in social units that are called tribes. And when we look at the great patriarchal consciousness of Judaism and Islam, we realize that so much of the society was based on tribal units. For us, of course, we're not necessarily living in a clan, although a family can be perceived to be a clan, but we're certainly vibrating in family units. And so we begin to realize that if we don't want to be part of that, often the other units in the family, or within the social group of the clan, or within the society, find our behavior unattractive. So they say, no, you should do this, you ought to do this, you will do this, it is your obligation and your duty to do this. And so what we feel is that their love becomes conditional rather than it being unconditional.
Exactly.
And so we're beginning, I believe, to slowly revolutionize that and recalibrate all of that, so that, of course, what happens is that we move back into a much greater understanding of all oneness, because many of us have chosen through our incarnational pathways to live lives of societal conflict, where we believe that they make us feel alone because we feel rejected by them.
Totally.
Well, there's no way that you can be rejected if you believe yourself to be unrejectable.
Yeah.
It just is a change of circumstances. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So that's a very long, hopefully clear, but rather multi-layered, multi-dimensional, multiplicitous way of being able to describe why they come. And they come to teach us that we don't need to be alone, and let's stop thinking of ourselves as that, so that we call upon them. And this is something that men and women have always done. For example, if we go back into the early Greek-Roman civilizations, there was a great belief that we all had guardian angels that were either, in Rome they were known as genies, or which is the root of the word genius, so you have genius, or if it was Greek it was known as the demon or the daemon, which of course through paganism we've actually demonized. But actually it was the guardian spirit. So they didn't believe that they did it. They believed, whatever it was, that they believed that their guardian, which was a messenger of the source, a messenger of God, because an angel or angelus means messenger of light, that they came through human conduct to formulate whatever the creation was on the outside. I find that very, very, very beautiful. And so these angels, these 12, come. There are names that we know. There are names like Michael and Raphael and Uriel and I'm just thinking of the familiar names.
Oh, okay.
Of Gabriel.
Gabriel, yeah.
Gabriel, of Michael, of Raphael and Uriel.
Yeah.
The 4 great familiar names.
But I like Shamael.
So
Shamael's becoming quite well known, I think.
Shamael, Jophiel.
Yeah, because I call him Shamal, I told you.
Metatron.
Yeah.
You see, these are these extraordinary beings. And Safkiel and Zadkiel, who are not that well known, but are very alive within Kabbalah.
Yeah.
That they come, these 12, to show us what their hearts are. So they always come to me in a very preternatural, a very intuitive, in a mediumistic way. It was the end of spring last year. I was going through a period where I couldn't sleep, and I don't get disturbed by that. I just know that I'm channeling something really huge, and being up in the middle of the night is actually really quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I get a lot of writing. Yeah, it's so still, and you can just start writing, can't you? 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. If you wake up and you start writing, it just
it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
That level of activity. So I would wake up and I would see these symbols, and I thought, what are these symbols? And they're rather like mini sacred geometric forms. And so I say to the angels, what are these? And they say, we are giving you our hearts. We're giving you our hearts because it is time for us to give our hearts in this way. That we've given representation of our hearts. But because the heart is the seat of the soul, we're now giving you, effectively, we're giving you our souls. I found that so moving that they've chosen to actually give us this. And of course they make that intelligent through the sensory implications of what it is to be a human being, in terms of what we see and what we feel and what we can interpret through sound and so forth. So that our senses are literally bombarded, and also by something very beautiful. So they come in, this oracle awakens the right brain, which we know is a great gateway into the numinous, a great gateway into intuition, because intuition is the superhighway where the angels roam, so to give us information, to allow us from an oracular point of view how we can get closer to God, because they are messengers of God. So I'm very thrilled by these, and it seems already, although they're in the process of being published, that in other words, what I'm saying is they're not fully available in the market just yet. They will be in April, and we're recording in mid-February, aren't we? So I'm very proud and very appreciative and grateful of the angels for giving us these extraordinary works of art that we can use as a dowsing device to find our way forward if we have questions.
Yeah, and a support, a guide, a support. They're guiding you, and to some extent the cards are definitely guiding others. We did a card this morning, and you did do a first, as always, everyone. I put links.
I was going to say, well, there's
here we go. This one just comes. This comes right now.
Why don't we choose a card?
You're not going to. Yeah, but you're not going to believe what card this is.
It's wonder.
Yeah, and how does he know that? I'm going to have to tell you, because it's all about transparency.
I don't know. I'm just listening.
How does he know that?
What is this?
Yeah, but I have to,
because this point of recognition.
This is all about transparency, but it's very relevant. It's very, very relevant. Although he is psychic too, it's very relevant, because I actually, funnily enough, did pull a card this morning, and it was wonder. It's come out. It's come. But does that mean it's coming out? It's coming out to say this is your card, my card. I mean,
well,
this is today's card.
What I thought would be, I was about to say, so why don't we choose a card?
That's what I was going to do
for the conversation that we're having.
That's what I was going to say as well.
Flew out. Yeah. The angels flew out.
But we pulled this card.
I remember, but I also chose a card.
Yeah, you chose a card.
You chose one card, I chose a card. This is
yeah.
before we came on air.
Yeah.
And my card was harmony.
Harmony, yeah.
So it could have been harmony, but actually I knew it was
exactly.
wonder. I asked and they said it's wonder.
Exactly, yes.
So we're having a wondrous conversation.
Wondrous conversation.
Most of them, particularly this latter part, and so it is in heaven, we began.
Yeah.
The latter part of our conversation is all about wonderment, it's all about magnificence.
Yeah,
it's
full expression, yeah.
Release oxytocin within our bodies.
Totally.
Because our cellular blueprint is literally programmed for health. It's not programmed for disease. It's programmed
I like that.
for health. We are programmed for harmony. We are programmed for joy. We are programmed for love. We are programmed for delight, for thrills, for exhilaration, for jubilation. We are programmed for absolute harmony.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Yeah.
And
that's the invitation.
We know this through heart math. We know this, that when we're feeling these, that heart math calls them soul tingles, not soul stabs or heart stabs, but soul tingles. That what happens physiologically speaking is that our hearts, which are the size of our fist, there's a wonderful tradition in China when you're 18, when you come of age, that a cast of your fist is taken and it's made into the laughing Buddha. because that is the size of your heart. So you've got a big heart.
Yeah.
Look at that heart.
It's a big heart.
Wow.
You're doing okay.
And what happens is that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Whereas if we're feeling worry and anxiety and anger and so forth, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is we know that the heart has an energy field 5,000 times greater than the human brain. So when we're feeling joy and thrills and delight and exhilaration
and wonder,
actually our energy field is vast. So you and I know that here we are, two humble men having this conversation in this rather magnificent setting.
Beautiful.
And here we are sharing with you, but we also know that our energy field is so vast that actually we're in an apartment building in central London, that all the other people that are living in this apartment building will get this vibration and beyond, into the street out there and beyond. You know, maybe the energy field that we're creating is 70, 80, 90 or 100 feet around us, and it is purely the note of magnificence and wonder.
Let's just sit with that for a moment. And you know what's so I know that is the perfect place to finalize, and I don't have anything to add to that. I don't have anything to add to that. And also within that, prior to us even moving into the card, there were so many layers there that Stewart was throwing out there. So these conversations, you can't watch them just once. Yeah, well, you can. There's no expectation, of course. But these conversations, when I put these conversations up online, I can only label them a little sentence, a little description. You know, the depth of these conversations are really, you have to come back to them and listen to them and look at little areas of those. Take an area or a chunk out of what some of Stuart's shared today, and like I said earlier, go on an exploration. But when you're in that heart space, you're releasing oxytocin, as Stewart said, and that is almost like it's a chemical. It's a natural scientific science. If you like science, you're into science, and you want to follow that. That's an alchemical process a chemical process that goes into your body. And when you're in fear and that tightness, you're releasing cortisol, and cortisol is a calcification of the body. It's a closing. It's a shutting down, as Bruce Lipton describes. It's a protective cell. And what we're talking about today is the expansive, growth cell. It's about how we can grow and connect. So thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've loved this conversation as much as I have, listening to the wealth of knowledge from Stewart. And I love the way, what I love as well, what you do, is I love how you link, with that knowledge, so I always love that, is when you link it with, other religions, past, the history, the move through, because I think for the audience, when they just hear somebody, throw something out there, and it's like, you can't often, the mind wants logic, right? Or the brain wants to go, oh, how did he, I love how you link that together. So I really, I just really want to, I know you do that, but I really want to, acknowledge it, because it helps me. I'm listening, and I'm learning from this myself. As always, everything that Stewart does will be on the links. So I have another page on the website, so you can see the far from old, but the first oracle cards.
First oracle, the Angels of Atlantis.
These were the Angels of Atlantis, and then we've got the second ones, which you guys will probably actually you'll see this sort of in and around March. So coming out in April, and other than that, you know how to do it now. If you don't know Stewart, look at the links, follow the links, Google the man, and
can I just say my website?
Yeah, of course you can say your website, 100%.
www.thealchemyofvoice.com and www.theangelsofatlantis.com.
Do you think he's done that before? I think he has. That's I have nothing else to say other than
bless you. It's been wonderful.
It's been bless you. It's bless you, and it's bless you.
And bless you.
Yeah.
Namaste, namaste.
Namaste, namaste. Thank you, Stuart.
My pleasure.